The phone felt heavy in my hand, almost like it knew the weight of the storm about to hit. My fingers hovered over Janet's contact, that familiar photo of her smirking in the Florida sun staring back at me. I wasn't ready for what came next, but something deep inside me told me to press call. I thought it'd go to voicemail. I wanted it to, honestly. But when the line clicked and a man's voice answered, the world seemed to tilt. "This is the FBI," the voice said sharply. "We need to talk about your wife. We'll be there in 3 hours. Stay home." My breath hitched. It felt like someone had sucker punched me in the gut, and all I could muster was a shaky, "What is this about?" But the man hung up without another word. My mind raced, jumping from Janet's weird behavior lately to this sudden, cryptic call. 3 hours. I stared at the clock, my pulse racing as the seconds dragged. This wasn't a conversation I could have predicted, not in my wildest, darkest dreams. I had been noticing things, little things. Janet wasn't herself anymore. The late nights, working, had turned into full weekends, with friends. She used to text me incessantly when we were apart, but now, days went by without so much as a, "How are you?" And then there was the Miami trip. "Business," she'd said. A networking opportunity, too good to miss. But Janet had never been much of a networker. I remembered the way she'd avoided my eyes as she packed. Something about her smile, it felt off, like a mask hiding something sinister. Her absence stretched longer than expected, and when I called to check in, all I got were curt, distracted responses or unanswered calls. My gut told me something was wrong, but I had brushed it aside. Until today. Until this call. The agents arrived just as promised, their black suits and somber faces bringing an air of finality into the room. The one in front, Agent Carter, he introduced himself, spoke with a calm precision that made my skin crawl. "Your wife, Janet, was killed today in Miami," he said, each word stabbing at my chest. "She got caught in a shootout between cartels." The room spun. I wanted to feel sadness, but what came instead was confusion, and something darker. I stared at Carter, searching for answers that didn't make sense. A shootout? Cartels? The words barely made it out of my mouth. Carter nodded, glancing at his partners. "She wasn't involved, at least not directly." Wrong place, wrong time. Wrong place, wrong time. It sounded so clinical, so neat. But I knew Janet. I knew she lied as easily as breathing. Whatever she had been doing in Miami, this wasn't some tragic accident. I forced tears to my eyes, choking out a trembling sob that felt as hollow as my chest. Carter's face softened as he watched me crumble. "We're sorry for your loss," he said, patting my shoulder. But inside, something else entirely was brewing. This wasn't grief. It was a storm, a chaotic mix of rage, betrayal, and dark satisfaction. Because what Carter didn't know, what even Janet never suspected, was that her death wasn't just a tragic coincidence. It was carefully planned. By me. As the agents stood in my living room, their words reverberating in the air, I played my role perfectly, grieving husband, stunned by the cruel hand of fate. My tears fell with precision, each one punctuating my disbelief. But inside, my thoughts churned with memories, each one painting a clearer picture of Janet's betrayal. Agent Carter's voice broke through the fog. "We understand this is overwhelming, Mr. Turner. But we need to ask a few questions to piece together the events leading up to this." I nodded, swallowing hard. "Of course," I said, my voice shaky. "Anything to help." Janet's descent into deceit didn't happen overnight. Looking back, the signs were all there, etched in small, seemingly insignificant moments that I had been too blind, or too trusting, to see. It started 6 months ago. Janet had grown distant, her once loving demeanor replaced with a sharp edge. She started spending more time on her phone, texting late into the night with a grin she didn't bother to hide. When I'd ask who she was talking to, her answers were always flippant. "Oh, just Linda," she'd say. Or, "Work stuff. Boring, you don't want to hear about it." But it wasn't Linda or work. I knew that now. I remembered the business trip to Chicago, the one where her itinerary didn't match her flights. The time she came home wearing a perfume I didn't recognize. And that one moment that still stung the most, her whispered phone call in the kitchen when she thought I was asleep. She had laughed. A laugh so full of warmth and affection that it felt like a knife to my chest. She hadn't laughed like that with me in years. "Mr. Turner?" Carter's voice pulled me back to the present. I blinked, focusing on the agent's expectant face. "Can you tell us about the last time you spoke with your wife?" I hesitated, feigning the struggle to recall through my grief. "It was a few days ago," I said, my voice trembling. "She said she was going to Miami for work. Something about a conference." Carter exchanged a glance with his colleagues, the kind of look that said they knew something I didn't, or at least something they thought I didn't. "Did she mention anyone she'd be meeting there?" he asked. "No," I lied smoothly. Janet wasn't one for details. She said she'd be busy and that she'd call when she could. I didn't want to bother her. Another agent, a younger woman with sharp eyes, scribbled something in her notebook. I wondered what conclusions she was drawing. Were they piecing together Janet's lies as carefully as I had? Or were they just cataloging my answers for a report no one would care about next week? When the agents finally left, leaving behind condolences and their cards, I stood in the silence of my home, the weight of their visit pressing down on me. I should have felt relief. After all, the plan had gone off without a hitch. But instead, I felt the cold, gnawing sting of betrayal. Because even though Janet was gone, forever, I couldn't erase the image of her with him. His name was Eric, and he wasn't just her lover. He was her accomplice. I had found out about Eric 2 months ago, purely by accident. Janet had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter, her email displayed for the world, or at least me, to see. I wasn't the snooping type, but when I saw the subject line, "Can't wait to see you again, Red Heart," I couldn't stop myself. The emails were explicit. Janet wasn't just cheating, she was reveling in it. Trips to Miami, secret rendezvous in hotels I couldn't afford, and promises of a future where I didn't exist. My hands shook as I read her words, each one tearing at the fabric of our life together. I wanted to confront her then, to throw her laptop at her feet and demand answers. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the cold, calculating part of me that knew I needed more. Or maybe it was the seething anger that wanted something bigger, something final. So I waited. I watched. And when Janet announced her next business trip to Miami, I made my move. It wasn't hard to find Eric. Janet had mentioned his favorite bar in one of her emails, some trendy rooftop spot in the city. I followed her there one night, my heart pounding as I watched them from a distance. They laughed, touched, and kissed as if I didn't exist. As if we didn't exist. I took photos. Not for proof, but for myself. To remind me that Janet had made her choice. When she flew to Miami the next week, I made a call of my own. One to someone who knew how to handle situations like this. I didn't ask questions about how it would be done, and I didn't want to know the details. All I wanted was for Janet's betrayal to end, permanently. Now, as I sat alone in the quiet of my home, the reality of what I had done settled over me. Janet was gone. Eric was probably gone, too, collateral damage in the chaos I had unleashed. And yet, the satisfaction I had expected never came. Instead, all I felt was emptiness. Because no matter how much I hated Janet for what she had done, there was still a part of me that had loved her once. A part that still couldn't understand how she could have thrown it all away. My phone buzzed, dragging me out of my thoughts. It was a text from Agent Carter. We may have more questions. Stay available. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. The FBI wasn't done with me yet. And something told me this was far from over. The text from Agent Carter sat on my phone screen like a ticking bomb. Stay available. 2 words, but they carried an ominous weight. My carefully orchestrated plan had gone off without a hitch, but the FBI's persistence was an unexpected twist. I couldn't afford to let my guard down now. Sinking into the worn leather couch, I replayed every interaction with the agents in my mind. Had I overdone the grief? Missed a detail in my answers? Carter's sharp gaze kept flashing before me, as though he had seen through the cracks in my act. I grabbed a glass of bourbon from the kitchen, the burn steadying my nerves. It wasn't guilt that made me uneasy, guilt was a luxury I couldn't afford. No, this was something deeper, a primal instinct warning me that the web I had spun might be tighter than I realized. The hours dragged as I waited for the next shoe to drop. My mind kept circling back to Janet and Eric. The emails. The late-night whispers. The way she had laughed with him, a sound so full of life it had made me feel like a shadow in my own home. Janet had been many things, deceitful, manipulative, and selfish, but stupid wasn't one of them. She must have known I'd find out eventually. Maybe she even wanted me to. The thought simmered in my chest like acid. She'd treated me like an afterthought, a placeholder while she built her new life with Eric. But now her plans were ashes. Literally. The knock on the door startled me out of my thoughts. My heart pounded as I set the glass down, wiping my hands on my jeans before opening the door. It was Carter again, flanked by the same sharp-eyed female agent and a new face, a man with an unreadable expression. "Mr. Turner," Carter greeted, his tone clipped. "May we come in?" I stepped aside, forcing a polite smile. "Of course. Is there news?" Carter's face remained impassive. "We're following up on a few leads." The agents filed in, their presence instantly shifting the energy in the room. Carter wasted no time, his questions coming rapid fire. "Can you confirm if Janet had any connections in Miami beyond work colleagues?" "No," I replied evenly. "She never mentioned anyone specific." "Are you aware of any financial issues she may have had?" That one caught me off guard. "Financial issues?" "No. We were comfortable. Janet handled most of the bills, though." Carter exchanged a glance with the female agent, who scribbled something in her notebook. My stomach twisted. What were they fishing for? "And her phone?" Carter asked. "Did she leave it here, or take it with her?" "She took it," I said quickly, then added, "Why?" "We're analyzing its data," Carter said smoothly. "It's routine." "Routine, my ass." Janet's phone was the one loose thread I hadn't accounted for. My chest tightened as I imagined what they might find. Her emails, her texts with Eric, it was all there. But then again, that worked in my favor, didn't it? The more they uncovered about her affair, the more they'd see me as the clueless husband blindsided by betrayal. Still, their questions unnerved me. The new agent, silent until now, finally spoke up. "Mr. Turner, we understand this is difficult," he said, his voice calm. "But we need to ask, did you and Janet have any recent disagreements?" I hesitated, then nodded. "A few. Nothing serious. Just the usual married stuff." The agent's gaze didn't waver. "And you didn't suspect she might have been involved with someone else?" There it was. The question I'd been waiting for. "No," I lied, forcing a bitter chuckle. Though, looking back, maybe I should have. She was distant lately. I thought it was stress from work. The room fell silent for a moment, the tension thick enough to choke on. Then Carter stood, slipping his notepad into his pocket. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Turner," he said. "We'll be in touch if we have more questions." As they left, I felt a strange mix of relief and unease. They were digging, but I still had the upper hand. Janet's affair painted her as reckless, and her death in Miami tied her fate to the chaos she had sought out. Later that night, I sat in the darkness of our bedroom, staring at the untouched side of the bed where Janet had once slept. It was strange how empty the house felt without her, even after all the anger, the lies, and the betrayal. I reached for my phone, pulling up her number out of habit. My thumb hovered over the call button before I caught myself. "She's gone," I reminded myself. "Gone for good." But as I stared at the screen, my phone buzzed with a notification. An email, from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "You thought it was over?" My breath caught as I opened it. The message was short, but it sent a chill down my spine. "You're not as clever as you think, Jason. See you soon." The attached photo was grainy, but unmistakable. It showed me sitting in my car outside Janet's favorite bar, camera in hand, watching her and Eric. I dropped the phone as my pulse skyrocketed. Whoever had sent this wasn't bluffing, they knew what I'd done. And they weren't done with me yet. The email stared back at me from my phone, the words burning into my mind. My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out the oppressive silence of the room. I picked up the phone again, rereading the message, hoping I'd imagined it. But the photo, me sitting in my car outside Janet's bar, was undeniable. Someone knew. My first instinct was to delete the email, to pretend it didn't exist, but that wouldn't solve anything. Whoever sent this had proof. Proof that could ruin me if it got into the wrong hands. I sank into the chair by the window, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Who could it be? I mentally ran through the list of people Janet might have told about her affair. Linda, her coworker? No, Linda was too timid, the kind of person who would avoid conflict at all costs. One of Eric's friends, maybe? Possible, but none of them would care enough to confront me. And then it hit me. Eric. I had assumed he was collateral damage in the chaos I orchestrated. But what if he wasn't? What if he survived the shootout? What if he knew everything and was coming for me? The thought sent a shiver down my spine. I'd seen the fire in his eyes that night at the bar when Janet kissed him. He wasn't the type to let this slide. Unable to sit still, I grabbed my keys and headed for the car. The walls of the house felt like they were closing in, the air too heavy to breathe. I needed to clear my head, to think. The night was dark, the streets quiet as I drove aimlessly, the hum of the engine a soothing constant in the chaos of my thoughts. As I rounded a corner, my phone buzzed again. Another email. I pulled over, my hands trembling as I unlocked the screen. "Did you really think you could erase her and walk away?" This time, the email included an audio file. My thumb hovered over the play button, dread pooling in my stomach. Taking a deep breath, I tapped it. Janet's voice crackled through the speakers, a recording of one of her fights with Eric. "You promised me we'd leave together," she shouted. "That we'd start fresh. I didn't ruin my marriage for you to back out now." Eric's voice was colder. "You didn't ruin your marriage for me, Janet. You ruined it for yourself. You're selfish, and you've got more enemies than you realize." The recording ended abruptly, leaving me stunned. Janet's words hit me like a truck. She had planned to leave me for him, to start over without a second thought. But Eric's response was even more chilling. "More enemies than you realize." I didn't sleep that night. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer, every noise amplified by my fraying nerves. When the sun finally rose, I was no closer to an answer. All I knew was that someone was playing a dangerous game, and I was their target. My phone buzzed again, this time with a call. The number was blocked. My thumb hovered over the decline button, but curiosity, or desperation, made me answer. Hello? You're in over your head, Jason, a voice said, deep and distorted. Janet's death was only the beginning. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. The call disconnected before I could respond. My hands shook as I stared at the phone, my thoughts spiraling. This wasn't just about Janet's affair anymore. It was bigger, messier, and far more dangerous than I had imagined. By the time Agent Carter showed up at my door again, I was a wreck. My mind raced with every possible explanation for the threats, each one worse than the last. Carter's calm demeanor as he stepped inside only heightened my paranoia. We've uncovered some new information about Janet, he began, his tone measured. It seems she had connections to individuals with criminal ties. Did you know about this? I shook my head, feigning shock. Criminal ties? No. Janet wasn't, she wasn't like that. Carter studied me for a moment, his expression unreadable. We found substantial withdrawals from your joint account over the past year. Tens of thousands of dollars. Any idea where that money went? I blinked, genuinely surprised. No. She handled our finances. I had no idea. The agent leaned forward, his voice dropping. We believe Janet was involved in laundering money for a cartel. Her trips to Miami weren't about work, they were about moving cash. I stared at him, my shock this time entirely real. Janet had been laundering money? My head spun as the pieces fell into place. The shootout. The cartel. The threats. This wasn't just fallout from her affair, this was something far more dangerous. Do you have any enemies, Mr. Turner? Carter asked, his gaze piercing. Anyone who might have reason to target you now that Janet is gone? I shook my head, my throat dry. No. I'm nobody. Why would anyone come after me? But as Carter's eyes narrowed, I knew he wasn't convinced. And deep down, neither was I. Janet's world of lies was bigger than I'd ever imagined, and now I was caught in the middle of it. That night, I received another email. This one had no message, just a single image, a photo of my house, taken from the street. Someone was watching. As I stared at the screen, my blood ran cold. Whoever they were, they weren't just threatening me. They were here. The image of my house, taken from somewhere on the street, was more than a threat, it was a declaration of war. My mind raced as I stared at the photo on my phone, my pulse pounding like a war drum. They're watching me. They're close. I quickly checked the windows, pulling the curtains shut. My house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a trap. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind against the siding set my nerves on edge. Whoever sent the email wasn't just toying with me, they wanted me to feel hunted. The following morning, Agent Carter called again. His voice carried the same clipped professionalism, but I detected an edge of suspicion. We've reviewed Janet's phone, he began. There are a few things we need to discuss. Can you come to the station today? I hesitated, my stomach twisting into knots. What did you find? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. We'll go over it in person, Carter said, evading the question. Be here at noon. I agreed, hanging up with a shaky hand. What could they have found? The station felt sterile and unwelcoming, its cold fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows. Carter led me into a small interview room, the female agent from before already waiting with a thick folder. The tension in the air was suffocating. We've uncovered significant evidence that Janet was tied to criminal activity, Carter began, sliding the folder toward me. But that's not all. I opened the folder, my eyes scanning the documents and photos inside. Bank statements showing massive withdrawals, texts with names I didn't recognize, and photos of Janet meeting with shadowy figures in expensive suits. My mind reeled as I tried to process the scope of her secret life. But then Carter dropped the bombshell. She wasn't just laundering money, he said. She was negotiating deals. We believe she was acting as a middleman between two rival cartels. That shootout? She was the target. The room spun. The target? I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. Carter nodded grimly. It seems she tried to double-cross one of them. And now, they may be coming for anyone connected to her, including you. I left the station in a daze, Carter's warning ringing in my ears. Stay alert. And if you notice anything unusual, call us immediately. Unusual? My entire life had been upended, my wife revealed as a liar, cheater, and criminal, and now I was a potential target of cartel retaliation. The word unusual felt laughable. As I drove home, paranoia wrapped around me like a straitjacket. Every car that followed too closely, every pedestrian lingering on the sidewalk felt like a threat. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for several minutes, scanning the street for anything out of place. Nothing. But the absence of danger didn't bring comfort, it only heightened my anxiety. That night, the next blow came. I was sitting in the living room, staring blankly at the TV when my phone buzzed. Another blocked number. My hand trembled as I answered. You're running out of time, Jason, the distorted voice said, colder than before. You should have stayed out of it. Janet's sins are yours now. Who the hell are you? I snapped, my voice breaking with fear and anger. What do you want from me? A low chuckle crackled through the line. We want balance. And we'll take it, one way or another. The call ended before I could respond. I threw the phone onto the couch, my chest heaving with shallow breaths. Balance? What did that even mean? Was it money? Revenge? Or something worse? I didn't have time to dwell. Moments later, the lights in the house flickered, then went out entirely. Darkness swallowed the room, and for a second, I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Then the sound came, a deliberate, measured knock at the front door. Every instinct screamed at me to stay put, to call the police, but something drew me to the door. Maybe it was the faint hope that it was Agent Carter, here to deliver some sliver of control back to my shattered life. Or maybe it was the growing sense that hiding wouldn't save me. I grabbed the nearest weapon I could find, a fireplace poker, and approached the door. The knocking came again, louder this time, more insistent. My pulse thundered as I peered through the peephole. Nothing. The porch was empty. I slowly opened the door, the poker raised, my eyes scanning the darkness. The street was eerily quiet, the only sound the distant hum of a neighbor's generator. Then I saw it, an envelope lying on the doormat. Inside, a single note written in bold, blocky letters. You're next. I stumbled back inside, locking the door behind me. My hands shook as I stared at the note, my mind racing. This wasn't just a threat anymore, it was a promise. Janet's death had opened a Pandora's box, and now, no matter what I did, I couldn't close it. I grabbed my phone and dialed Carter's number. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. This is Agent Carter. Leave a message. Agent Carter, I said, my voice trembling. Someone's threatening me. They were at my house. I need. The line went dead. No dial tone, no click. Just silence. I pulled the phone away, staring at the blank screen. The power was out, the phone lines were down, and I was utterly alone. Whoever was coming for me was already one step ahead. And they weren't stopping until I paid for Janet's lies, with my life. The silence in the house was suffocating. The darkness pressed against me like a living thing, and the note in my hand felt like a death sentence. "You're next." The words burned into my mind, a chilling mantra that echoed with every breath I took. I forced myself to move. Sitting still meant giving in to the fear, and fear was a luxury I couldn't afford. I needed to act. I needed a plan. But first, I needed to see. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer, its beam cutting through the oppressive blackness as I swept the room. Every shadow seemed to shift and crawl, but there was no one inside. Not yet. I double-checked the locks on the doors and windows, my grip tightening on the flashlight as if it were a weapon. My phone buzzed again, a faint vibration against the countertop that made me jump. I snatched it up, my heart sinking as I saw another blocked number. This time, I didn't hesitate to answer. "Who is this?" I barked, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. The distorted voice came again, calm and mocking. "You think locking the doors will save you?" A cold chill raced down my spine. I spun around, pointing the flashlight at the living room window. The curtains were drawn, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. "Show yourself, you coward!" I shouted, my voice cracking. The voice chuckled. "We're closer than you think, Jason. But don't worry, we like to take our time." The line went dead, leaving me shaking with adrenaline and dread. I called Agent Carter again, pacing the living room as the phone rang endlessly. When it went to voicemail, I left another frantic message. "Carter, it's Jason Turner. Someone's here, at my house. They've been watching me. They're threatening me. I need help. Please, call me back." As I hung up, I caught movement outside the window, just a flash of something. My breath hitched, and I killed the flashlight, plunging the room into complete darkness. I moved cautiously to the window, peeling the curtain back just enough to see the street. Nothing. The street was empty, the houses dark and still. But I knew better than to believe it was over. My mind raced as I considered my next move. Staying here was a death sentence. I needed to leave, to get somewhere safe. But where? If this was tied to Janet's dealings with the cartel, there was no guarantee I'd be safe anywhere. The garage. My car was my best chance. I grabbed the keys from the counter and crept toward the garage door, every creak of the floorboards making my heart leap. The air felt heavier with each step, as if the house itself was holding its breath. I opened the door to the garage, my flashlight sweeping over the concrete floor and the car parked in its usual spot. Relief washed over me for a brief moment, until I saw the note taped to the windshield. I froze, the beam of the flashlight trembling as I stepped closer. The note was written in the same blocky letters, "Running won't save you." My knees nearly buckled. They had been inside my garage. They had been close enough to leave a note. My instinct screamed at me to run, but where could I go that they couldn't follow? The sound of breaking glass shattered the silence. I spun around, heart racing as I pointed the flashlight back toward the house. The sound had come from the living room. My pulse thundered in my ears as I edged closer, clutching the fireplace poker like a lifeline. The living room window was shattered, shards of glass glittering on the floor. A brick lay in the middle of the room, wrapped in another piece of paper. I didn't want to read it, but I had no choice. I unfolded the paper with shaking hands, the words making my blood run cold. "We warned you, Jason. Time's up." Panic surged through me. I had to leave, now. Screw the car, screw the plan. I needed to get out before they came inside. I bolted for the back door, my breathing ragged as I fumbled with the lock. The cold night air hit me like a slap as I stepped into the backyard. The world outside felt vast and exposed, every shadow a potential threat. I scanned the yard, the flashlight cutting through the darkness, but I saw no one. That didn't mean they weren't there. I moved quickly, cutting through my neighbor's yard and toward the main road. My phone was clutched in my hand, and I dialed 911 with shaking fingers. The operator's calm voice came through after the first ring. 911, what's your emergency? Someone's after me, I gasped, struggling to keep my voice steady. They broke into my house, they're threatening to kill me. Sir, are you in a safe location? The operator asked. No, I said, my voice breaking. I'm running. I don't know where they are. Stay on the line, the operator instructed. Officers are being dispatched to your address. Can you describe the suspects? I hesitated, my mind blank. I didn't have a description, just a voice, a looming presence, and the notes. I don't know, I stammered. I didn't see them. The operator continued asking questions, but I barely heard her. My focus was on the road ahead, my legs burning as I ran toward the nearest light, a 24-hour gas station at the corner. It felt like a beacon, promising safety. But deep down, I knew it was only a temporary reprieve. The enemy wasn't just watching anymore. They were hunting. And I was running out of time. The fluorescent glow of the gas station came into view, a fragile sanctuary in the cold, oppressive night. My legs burned with every step, but I didn't stop until I reached the glass doors. I stumbled inside, the warmth of the air conditioning doing little to calm my nerves. The clerk looked up from his phone, his expression shifting from boredom to mild alarm at the sight of me, disheveled, panting, and clutching my phone like a lifeline. I barely noticed him as I leaned against the counter, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Are you okay? He asked, his voice cautious. Call the police, I managed to choke out. They're already on their way. I moved to a corner of the store, my back against the wall where I could see both the entrance and the street outside. The clerk hesitated for a moment before picking up the phone, and I could hear him explaining the situation to the dispatcher. My phone buzzed in my hand, another notification that made my stomach churn. An email. My thumb hovered over the screen, dread curling in my chest, but I opened it. You think you're safe? Attached was a video. Against my better judgment, I tapped it, and my blood ran cold. It was footage of me running through the neighborhood, taken from a distance. The camera followed my every move until I disappeared into the gas station. They were still watching. Still close. The door chimed as it opened, and I flinched, gripping the counter for support. 2 police officers stepped inside, their uniforms a small comfort against the crushing weight of fear. Jason Turner, one of them asked, his voice steady but sharp. I nodded, relief washing over me in waves. I'm being followed, I said quickly. They've been threatening me, they broke into my house. The officers exchanged glances, then one gestured for me to sit. We'll take your statement, he said. Start from the beginning. I told them everything, or at least, everything that wouldn't implicate me. The threats, the emails, the shattered window, the brick, and finally the video. I handed over my phone, my fingers trembling as the officer reviewed the evidence. This is serious, he said after a moment. But we need more context. Do you have any idea who might be targeting you? I hesitated, the weight of my secret threatening to crush me. My wife, I began, choosing my words carefully, was involved with some dangerous people. The FBI told me she was laundering money for a cartel. I think this has to do with her. The officer's eyes narrowed. And you had no involvement in her activities? None, I said, my voice firm. I didn't even know about it until after she died. As the officers took my statement, I couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. Whoever was after me wasn't going to stop just because I had called the cops. If anything, it might escalate things. The officers offered to escort me back to my house, but I refused. I can't go back there, I said, shaking my head. They've been inside. They left a note on my car. Do you have somewhere else you can stay? One of them asked. I thought about it for a moment. I had no close family nearby, no friends I could trust with something this dangerous. Then it hit me, there was one person who might be able to help. Someone who owed me a favor. I have someone, I said. But I need a ride. The officers agreed to drive me, their patrol car cutting through the night as I directed them to an address on the outskirts of town. The house belonged to a man named Greg, a former co-worker and occasional fixer who had a knack for dealing with messy situations. He wasn't a saint, but he was resourceful, and right now, I needed someone who knew how to think on his feet. When we arrived, Greg was waiting on the porch, a cigarette dangling from his lips. His eyes narrowed as he took in the sight of me climbing out of the police car. Jason, he said, exhaling a cloud of smoke. This looks serious. It is, I said, stepping forward. I need your help. Inside, I laid out everything I could, sparing no details this time. The emails, the threats, Janet's double life, and my suspicions about who might be after me. Greg listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable as he took it all in. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, tapping ash into a tray. You're in deep, he said finally. Whoever these people are, they're not messing around. Can you help me? I asked, desperation leaking into my voice. Greg nodded slowly. I can make a few calls. Find out who's pulling the strings. But you're gonna have to lay low. Stay off the grid until I get answers. He set me up in a basement room, sparsely furnished but secure. As I settled in, my phone buzzed again, another email. This time, the subject line simply read, TikTok. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The message was clear. They were still coming, and Greg's help might not be enough to stop them. I lay in the dark, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Janet's lies had built a house of cards, and now that it had collapsed, I was buried under the rubble. The hunter was now the hunted, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep running. The basement felt like a tomb, the walls closing in with every passing second. The air was stale, heavy with the weight of unspoken fears. I stared at my phone, the unopened email taunting me like a predator circling its prey. Greg's words echoed in my head, lay low. But I couldn't. This wasn't just a threat anymore, it was a countdown. Whoever was after me wasn't going to stop until one of us was gone. Hours passed, the silence punctuated only by the occasional creak of the house above. I paced the room, my mind racing with half-formed plans and desperate ideas. Then Greg came down, his expression grim. I made some calls, he said, lighting another cigarette. Your wife wasn't just laundering money for the cartel. She was playing both sides, working for one group while feeding intel to their rivals. When they found out, she tried to run. My stomach churned. So they're coming after me because... Greg shrugged. Loose ends. Maybe they think you know something. Maybe they just want to send a message. Can you stop them? I asked, the desperation clear in my voice. Greg took a long drag, his eyes narrowing. Maybe. But it's going to cost you. The cost wasn't money, Greg made that clear. It was something far heavier, trust. He laid out his plan, and it was simple in theory, but horrifying in execution. We'd set a trap, luring them into a confrontation on my terms. The bait? Me. I hesitated, the weight of the decision bearing down on me. But what choice did I have? Running wasn't working, and hiding only delayed the inevitable. If this was going to end, it had to end now. Fine, I said, my voice steady despite the fear. Let's do it. The plan went into motion that night. Greg had connections to a network of people who specialized in making problems disappear. He sent out messages, spreading rumors that I had something Janet left behind, something valuable enough to draw her killers out. I didn't ask what the something was. It didn't matter. All that mattered was that it worked. The meeting point was an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town, the kind of place where no one asked questions and the echoes of gunfire could be mistaken for the distant hum of machinery. Greg and his team set up inside, hiding in the shadows while I stood in the open, my heart pounding like a war drum. The wait was agonizing. Every sound, every flicker of movement sent adrenaline coursing through me. Then, finally, headlights pierced the darkness, the rumble of engines breaking the stillness. They came in 2 cars, their silhouettes emerging like specters. There were 3 of them, armed and confident, their movements calculated. One of them, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, stepped forward. "Jason Turner," he said, his voice calm but laced with menace. "You've been busy." I forced myself to stand tall, swallowing the lump in my throat. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice steady despite the terror threatening to consume me. "You know what we want," Scarface said. "Janet owed us, and now her debt is yours." Before I could respond, Greg's voice cut through the darkness. "I don't think so." The crack of a gunshot shattered the tension, and chaos erupted. Greg's team emerged from the shadows, weapons blazing. The air filled with the deafening roar of gunfire and the acrid smell of smoke. I dropped to the ground, covering my head as bullets tore through the warehouse. The fight was over in seconds. When the dust settled, Scarface and his men were lying on the ground, their weapons scattered. Greg approached me, extending a hand to pull me up. "You okay?" he asked, his voice calm. I nodded, my legs shaky as I stood. "Is it over?" Greg glanced at the bodies, then back at me. "For now. But there's always someone higher up the chain." The drive back to Greg's house was silent, the weight of what had just happened settling over me like a heavy blanket. I should have felt relief, maybe even triumph, but all I felt was hollow. Janet's lies had brought me to this moment, but now that it was over, I wasn't sure what was left. Back at the house, Greg handed me a drink, his expression softer than usual. "You did good," he said. "Most people wouldn't have made it this far." I nodded, staring into the glass. "What now?" Greg leaned back, exhaling a plume of smoke. "Now? You disappear. Start over somewhere new. Forget this ever happened." It sounded so simple, but I knew it wouldn't be. The shadows of what Janet had done, and what I'd done to survive, would follow me no matter where I went. I left the next morning, a duffel bag in hand and no destination in mind. The world felt different, quieter somehow, but not in a comforting way. As I drove out of town, I couldn't help but glance in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights trailing me. There were none. But the paranoia remained, a constant reminder that the past was never truly buried. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that trust is a fragile thing. Janet shattered mine, and in the end, I had to destroy what little trust remained to survive. There's no clean slate in this life, just scars and lessons you carry forward. And as I drove into the horizon, the only thing I knew for certain was this: I wasn't running anymore. I was moving forward, no matter what ghosts followed me.